Hi, I'm Wayne Chapin, President of Zerillion, and welcome to You Don't Take IT Security and Management Seriously, Modernizing Your IT Security and Management. So that's me. I'm Wayne Chapin, President and founder of Zerillion. Got some certifications, and I've studied computer science at University of Illinois. I've consulted to a lot of companies, 500 plus over the years I've been doing IT consulting. Started out as an internal IT guy for 3 years, then went off to work with an accounting company to be a consultant, and then started Zerillion in 2002. So I've been doing this for 20 years full time, and I've seen a big change. And that's what this video is about, particularly where it comes to the management and security of your IT. And we do lots and lots of Office 365 stuff, and I've evolved over the years from what I call like, hey man, just get me hooked up to Office 365 to say, okay, let's do that, but let's think about how we're doing this and let's do it right. Let's do it right from the beginning. And this is how we should do it so you have the best possible of experience, and also so you have this system under control. So last thing though, I am all in with the Microsoft Cloud, and we'll talk about how these different services kind of fit together around Office 365. So let's take a look at the typical hybrid computer network these days. We've got some, this is the way it's the security anyway. So the basis of this, we've got a server, probably a host server with a couple of virtual machines, hosting domain controllers. We got a primary domain controller, and I hate to say backup domain controller because that takes us back to the NT4 days, but we still refer to it that way. We have two because just having one should make people nervous because Active Directory is so important on a computer network. But we have those, and we have a backup disaster recovery system protecting the servers, and then we have a firewall that we VPN into. And so we have user accounts here, and then we have some cloud services these days. We've got email, we've got a CRM, potentially, running on the network, but we have business applications that are outside of this local area network. And the main point is we have user accounts here, we have user accounts here, user accounts here, and then we have mobile devices, more and more of them, that are out there connecting into these services. It's not just everybody working on workstations here anymore. So I'm going to ask some questions, and then we'll get into what this is all about. So do you have any control over an employee copying entire company folders, finance, HR, sales, marketing, to their personal computer at home? Of course you don't. If someone was making a big copy of your company folders, do you have any mechanism to be alerted that this is going on? No, you don't. You'd never know. What if someone was deleting a huge set of your data? Would you be alerted? You wouldn't. What if someone in your company gets their user account hacked? Do you have any way to proactively block that account or reset that account? No. And again, thinking about that computer network we saw just a few slides ago, you would not. Do you allow your employees to sync company email and data to their personal cell phones? Sure you do. Most places do. Do you even know what happens to that data if they leave the company? You're not 100% sure. You probably haven't thought much about it. You don't put too much importance on that data. You hit the disable the account, and we don't think too much after that. Is getting data for free that was created and paid for by your company helpful to somebody who wants to take it? Definitely. I mean, think about this. This could be a jump start at a job with a competitor of yours. This could be a jump start on starting their new business. I mean, think about the thousands and thousands and tens of thousands of dollars that go into putting this data together. Marketing lists that you have cleaned and scrubbed with salespeople that you paid, or marketing content that you put together. You put your heart and soul because you know your customers so well and what they're looking for, and you got good messaging in place. Or all the time you put into documenting and creating business processes so your company runs really well. Or financial information in the company that either they're templates or spreadsheets that somebody else could use that they could just get running right away. Not to mention that some of that stuff is pretty sensitive. But just think about that. If you could just say, well, look, we've been running a company for 10 years, and if I could just grab the last 2 or 3 years of relevant data that I need, and I'm going to go ahead and take this somewhere else for whatever my intent is, starting a new business, working on a new job, that would be really helpful. And it's your expense. And on top of that, how about the data that is sensitive? That's probably going to go along for that with that ride for copying that data offsite as well. Is company data floating around out of your control a risk for you and your customers? There is no question about that. So now we either have data on site that we really don't have much control over, or we have data in the cloud that we have not much control over. And the data in the cloud has one huge advantage in that all the systems are there where we can easily sync stuff. And that is wonderful. Wonderful if you can have a synced copy of your data on your computer, so it's always there with you. Or you're on a plane, you can access to it, and so can other people. But you didn't even have that capability on the traditional network that we were looking at earlier. Now you have that. So we should think about that a little bit. Is your IT security based primarily on a Windows Server, domain controllers, and VPNs? If you aren't 100% in the cloud, then the answer is yes. The fact is that these Windows Server, domain controllers, and VPNs, it isn't much security for what you spend to maintain it. It's a terrible value, especially compared to what's available these days. And if you are 100% cloud-based company, do you have any way to manage all the logins to the different websites you work with? You don't. You have an account here, an account here, an account here, an account here, and when somebody leaves, you disable the account, like probably the email, and then you're like, oh, then maybe the really important one you remember to do, and then you have these other accounts, and you look back 6 months later, and you're like, geez, okay, well, we didn't even delete those accounts. Who knows if they're accessing it or not? Is your document security based on dropping files into the right folder on a file server, especially if they're sensitive documents? Probably. And I would extend that even into other cloud-based systems like Box or Dropbox. I mean, you're still tasked with putting these files into the right place, and the security hopefully is set properly. Do you have any control over emails or files with sensitive information after you click send? So you're typing up a sensitive email, you need to send it to your partner or manager, whether it's maybe an issue with an employee or an issue with a customer or some sort of legal issue that you've been brought in with your customer, stuff like that. You're typing these things up, and do you ever get that queasy feeling like, geez, probably better if I just called the person, but I don't even know if they're available right now, and I got to get out of the office here, so I got to get this over to them. But the content in here is really, boy, I hope this person takes good care of this. And hopefully somebody just doesn't muck it up and bring in the wrong person in the conversation or forward it off to the wrong person. But anyway, most people do not have control over that email once it gets sent out, whether it's the content in the email or the attachments in the email. So here's a good litmus test question for you about how seriously you take security and how confident you are about the security on your network. Would you put a spreadsheet stating your current salary and estimating your net worth on your company file share? One that you thought was really under your control. Would you do it? Of course you wouldn't. Never in a million years would you do that. Your sensitive data is stored on an account you fully control outside your company. Your client's data does not have the same protection on your system. I see it all the time. The owner of the company, the most sensitive documents that they have do not go on the company file share system. They go on a different account. Something to think about. But here's the thing. Do you tell and legally vouch to your customers that their data is securely maintained by your firm? All the time. Every contract you sign with your customers states that you're going to be a good steward of their data, you're not going to disclose anything, and you're going to take reasonable controls to make sure that data is safe, especially if it's stuff that they have, that you're working with, their data. So, but if I could just jump into the shoes of what I see out there, knowing what I know about the way things should be set up and can be set up at reasonable cost, and the way I see things set up in general, especially when we arrive and we show up and we see a computer network for the first time, I'm thinking, well, what could the owner be thinking when they're signing these contracts saying, you bet, we're going to take good care of the data, it's in good hands here. Especially, when they were just 3 or 4 people, that was one thing. But now they're 20 employees, 30 employees, 40 employees. And his attentions or her attention's all over the place with a lot of different things. But IT might not be the thing they're thinking about. They probably have that handed off to a business manager, an operations manager, or a finance manager, a controller, something like that. And they're thinking, has anything really improved since we started the company as far as our security goes? Because the owners probably think, I probably had concerns back then, but it was not huge of a deal. We weren't, we weren't dealing with huge numbers like we're dealing with right now. But are they really confident about the way things are set up? And I would say most of you out there, especially it's generally people watching this are usually like the business managers, operations manager, finance manager in charge of IT, or the IT manager that's looking for new ways to do things. They're probably not that confident about it. And they shouldn't be, from what I've seen. So let's do a reality check. You don't have any real control over your data. You're either too lax about your security or you're not being well advised. So let's go back and look at that computer network. This is the tradition. This is traditional. This is the one that's out there right now, most of the time. Like Wayne Chapin walks into a computer network, and I've done hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of these. I go in and look, and I say, this is what I generally see. I see domain controllers, they're virtualized. That's okay. That's good. We got the back disaster recovery system. We got the firewall. We got some stuff moved to the cloud, and usually they want to get more stuff moved to the cloud, but that's kind of where they're at right now. Where we want to get is this. We want to get to this point, and this is the way when you work with Xerillion and we're advising and managing your IT. This is where we would take you. So now there's no servers ever. There's no domain controllers here, no local domain controllers, and we'll get into that. No backup disaster recovery system. There is a firewall. There's a firewall on site. I'll never say that you shouldn't have a firewall, but I gotta say, as I go along in my consulting work, and I see less and less people behind a firewall, and they're actually mobile at different offices and things like that, or maybe there's an office where they have 2 people or a lot of people working out of their houses. The firewall that I'm getting more concerned about is the software firewall that's actually on the operating system. But anyway, we still have that firewall there. Now, all the services are up here in the cloud, and so if you're doing this with Office 365, you'll have Exchange Online, SharePoint Online, Skype for Business, Yammer, Dynamics 365, or you may have other cloud services that you're working with, Salesforce, Box, Dropbox, and the various different kinds of web-based ERP systems that are out there. But over here, we have the management side of this. And again, this is what this video is about today. Azure Active Directory, Microsoft Intune, and Azure Information Protection. And these things take over the security management for the computer network. These things make sure that these services over here stay secure and under your control, and that these devices connecting into these services over here stay under your control. And that's where we're going with this. So this is really what we're talking about, EMS, or Enterprise Mobility and Security, E5. There's a lot of stuff out there in the Microsoft cloud world, lots and lots and lots. And I remember when I first got into it, it was overwhelming, the amount of stuff that I felt like I had to learn, especially coming from the background that I did, which was more of the traditional IT, servers on site, email server on site, some virtualization, backup disaster recovery. But here, when I looked and I said one day, this is where things are going. Nobody wants to have more equipment on site. They want to have less equipment on site. So I better get with the program. And I remember diving into this, I'm thinking, oh my goodness, how am I ever going to get all this figured out? So for this video, I boiled it down to a few bullet points. There is way more that this stuff does than what I'm showing here. But I'm going to boil down to the stuff that I think really matters to the businesses that I consult for. So we're talking about enterprise mobility and security, E5 or EMS. So that has Azure Active Directory Premium 2. That has Microsoft Intune and Azure Information Protection 2. There are different versions of EMS. all right? And there are different versions of Azure Information Protection, different versions of Azure Active Directory, but don't worry about any of that. We're just going to talk about Enterprise Mobility and Security E5 because I feel that if you're really serious about your security in your IT, whether you're a startup or whether you're a much bigger company, EMS E5 is what you should be doing, okay? So let's do a few of these things here. Azure Active Directory. Now I'm gonna bullet point summarize this real quick, and then we're gonna dig into this a little bit further on, okay? But we're not gonna get so deep into the weeds. This won't be a how-to video, things like that, because that video would take 5 hours long to put together. But here we go. Azure Active Directory Premium Plan 2. Blocks unauthorized computers and mobile devices, not just user accounts, from accessing, copying, syncing company data. Okay, so it's certainly there when I log in to Azure Active Directory to get to my Office 365 cloud services. I'm putting in a username and a password, and the system says that username and password match. Great, you're authorized to access whatever you're supposed to have access to on the network, what you've been given permissions to. Azure Active Directory, through a process called Conditional Access, in conjunction with Microsoft Intune, also says just having a proper user account is not going to be enough, I'm afraid. We're actually going to see what device you're connecting from. And we either have to manage the device, has to be under our control, or the app you're connecting from your mobile device has to be under our control. And that's called conditional access. So you can't just have a user account and that be enough. We also want to make sure that the data that you're trying to access and work with is on a company managed computer and it's under our control, which is amazing that you have this capability. And for the price they charge for it, it is ridiculously cheap. It also proactively blocks hacked user accounts. So Azure Active Directory Premium 2 includes identity protection. And we'll get into that a little bit later too. But this is where if one of the employees in the company accidentally gives up their username or password, or you give up your username and password to a phishing scam or something like that, the Azure Active Directory is going to look at the login attempts, where they're coming from, determine are they high risk or not, and then make some decisions. It's also going to look just in general with all of the networks that Azure Active Directory is a part of. Does it see your user account floating around out there? And if it sees it in certain risky areas, whether you're logged in or not, it may force a password reset. And that's Azure Active Directory Identity Protection, which is an amazing feature that your local Windows domain controller could never dream of having this capability. And then there's Microsoft Intune. So Microsoft Intune automatically configures and maintains company computers and mobile devices. And I won't get into that here in this video, but again, I'll state that it automatically configures and maintains company computers and devices and does it without imaging. So we can enroll a computer and it immediately will be registered with Azure Active Directory. It'll have Microsoft Intune installed on it for device management. It'll configure all the settings, install the software, and we never maintain an image. So it's configuring it under our specifications. And then based on that, it'll report if a user is connecting with an authorized computer or mobile device to Azure Active Directory. So when somebody logs in, it's going to be Microsoft Intune. It's going to report to Azure Active Directory to say whether this is a computer under company management or not. And if it is under company management, is it compliant? Or has the user adjusted some settings that no longer makes it a compliant computer? And it's either going to allow or block the access to our cloud services, our data. And it also provides secure access to company data on employees' cell phones and without installing agent-based software. So we now have a way to allow employees to connect into company data with their personal devices, but without having to have that uncomfortable conversation about, well, if you leave the company, we're going to be able to wipe your device, or if you want to be able to connect this data, we have to install some sort of management app on your phone, your personal phone. Don't have to do any of that. We'll get into that a little bit later here too. And then Azure Information Protection. So this is the protection that your file server wishes it had. So we can actually protect your email and your documents right at the email level or at the document level. An individual user can add or remove permissions to files and folders without actually having to worry about, did they drop it in the wrong place in the file server? Did they email it out to the wrong people? If I send an email out, I will have complete control on anybody seeing the contents of that email, whether or not another recipient tried to add somebody else in or not, or whether or not a recipient tried to forward this off to somebody or not. The people who are not allowed to see that email will not be able to see it. People who are not allowed to see the contents of a Word doc, a PowerPoint presentation, or an Excel spreadsheet will not be able to see it as well. So conditional access. So that's where I was talking about Azure Active Directory and Microsoft Intune working together. And it's a very powerful feature. And it's something that you probably do not have on your network right now. The idea to say, again, it's not okay just based on having a valid user account. I also have to have a valid computer that's authorized by the company to access, copy, sync company data, store company data on the computer. So here, Microsoft Intune, through its computer configuration management, its computer compliance management, and its mobile app configuration, is either going to give a thumbs up or a thumbs down to a device that's connecting to a user that's trying to connect into our cloud system. And then Azure Active Directory is based on what Intune says, is either going to block or not block that connection to the cloud services. And the identity protection, that one right there is where I talked a little bit about it earlier, but I'm going to take it just a step further. The identity protection says Wayne normally logs in from Chicago. Well, today he's logging in from St. Louis. That might be okay. Wayne might be at an IT trade show in St. Louis today. But since it's unusual, we're going to call his cell phone, send a PIN code, or have him call it, and he'll enter a pound sign. We'll verify it's him because that's his cell phone that he has on register with his Azure Active Directory account. If the system sees that Wayne is logging in from Chicago and Russia at the same time of day, that's probably going to be a high-risk situation. We're immediately going to block the account, and then we're going to force a password reset. But these two systems work together to make sure that your identity stays protected and the data stays safe, and it's only going to be put on computers that the company authorizes are compliant and under company management. So what I want to take is I took some screenshots of what this looks like. So right here, I'm in portal.azure.com, where for the backend manager of IT or people that are responsible for this, this is where all this happens. So what I've done here is I've set a conditional access policy for Windows 10. And I said, okay, Windows 10 computer can access Exchange Online and SharePoint Online. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a policy saying that for those services, I'm going to grant access, but the computer has to be marked as compliant. And compliant meaning there's about 8 specifications that I require for a computer to be valid on the network under company compliance. And one of those is that it has to be enrolled under company management. So if Windows Intune, Microsoft Intune says that this computer is not compliant or not registered under company management, Azure, it'll send that back to Azure Active Directory and the login will fail. And then identity protection. So I'm going to show you a few screen clips from that. So I'm back in portal.azure.com. And so there's 3 things to make this work so that we configure here, and I highlighted them. Multi-factor authentication, that has to be set up for everybody. That's the one thing that we have to go around to each person. They have to enroll their phones, and they have to, without getting too deep into it, they have to set up something called app passwords for Outlook and Outlook and Skype for Business, and Skype for Business on their personal phone. But anyway, they get those enrolled, they set those up, and now we can actually proceed with forcing password resets or doing 2-factor authentication to a cell phone. And we have 2 different policies where we would be setting. We have user risk policies and sign-in risk policy. So the user risk policy is your Azure Active Directory watching the internet and seeing if your data is floating around, your email address, your user account, is floating around out there. If it sees it, and it sees it on websites that it knows that are, malicious websites or people are trying to sell identities, if it sees that, right away it's going to turn that your user risk is going to move to high. It's going to force a password reset the next time you log in, even though it was not a sign-in risk. And a sign-in risk is a real-time login attempt where it looks and goes, well, where is he logging in from? Or how's he logging in this time? He normally doesn't do it here. So we're either going to force that he does a second factor authentication on a cell phone, or we're going to force that his password needs to be reset. So those are things that we set with Azure Identity Protection. What happens in the background? It's machine learning, it's artificial intelligence, and we don't mess with any of that. Azure Active Directory Identity Protection handles all of that. So here we went ahead and set that everybody had to be enrolled in multi-factor authentication, and then we went ahead and set the user risk policy. And in our case, we set the condition for the user risk was a medium level, and that would require a password change under a user risk remediation, and that policy had to be enforced. And then also on the sign-in risk, we also set that if it was a medium risk, this would also require a second factor authentication attempt, and that policy was enforced. So again, this isn't meant to be a how-to, it's meant to be an overview. So I think it's helpful when people are talking about broad ideas of things, or they're talking about particular technologies. There's two ways to go about it. One is actually walk them through, screen by screen, which is really nice, but it would make this video take a really long time. But at least to be able to kind of see where these things are at, so you can at least start thinking about it and start clicking around, is usually very helpful. And then mobile app management. I want to show a little bit about that and what that looks like inside of Intune. So again, we're in portal.azure.com inside the Intune app protection. And right here you can see we have app policy. We have one for Android and one for iOS. And then here we've said, here's Exchange Online. These are the allowed apps. And right here, I said, if you want to connect to Exchange Online here at Cerillion, you have to use these apps. These are the only ones that are going to be allowed to connect to Exchange Online. And then from here, we set an app configuration policy. So on the iPhone, we said, here's the apps that we're going to set up configuration policies for. So again, go back to, these are the only apps that are allowed to connect to Exchange, for example. But for the iPhone, these apps we're going to set configuration settings for. We're going to prevent iTunes and iCloud backups. So under policy settings, we're going to have data relocation. So we're going to prevent iTunes and iCloud backups. And we're going to allow app to transfer data to other apps. So that the data can only be moved around to other policy managed apps. So it can't move, the data cannot go from a managed app to an app that's not managed. And we will allow our apps to receive data from other apps inside the system. So they can receive, all the apps, our managed apps can receive data, but they cannot transmit the data out, except to apps that are managed by the company. So if you think about it, the data is safe because it's inside of these iPhone apps that we manage, and it can only be moved around in there. The people cannot take that data out of those apps and then drop it in their Dropbox account or the local storage on that particular mobile device. And they can't, we're going to prevent save as, so they can just save something and drop it somewhere else. And here I've also specified that there's 2 locations that can save data to. SharePoint, OneDrive, that's it. And also we restrict cut, copy, and paste with other apps. And then the data itself is encrypted with when it's locked and we have open files. So anyway, you can see those are settings, and then also here, this one also that I thought I would manage that or mention that we block managed apps from running on jailbroken or rooted devices. I will also turn that on. And then we set a minimum operating system to connect into our data as well, through iPhones in this case. And we did it for the Androids as well. So email and document security. So this is where Azure Information Protection comes in. So here's an example. So I made a fictitious person, Tom Jones, of the Contoso Corporation. That's Microsoft's fake company name they use for all their examples. And I created an email to Debbie Wagner. And I said, didn't put a subject. Okay, well, anyway. So Debbie, we need an analysis of why Q2 profitability was much lower than we projected. It is not sustainable, and we need to sort it out quickly. Please provide me with your spreadsheet analysis as soon as you can, this week if possible. Cash flow is also a major concern. Well, so Tom's writing that letter up. And that's a pretty sensitive pretty sensitive email. And, you know, I'm sure he's frustrated right now. And but he's got to send this over to Debbie. Debbie's got to take care of it. She might be off that afternoon, but you know, later she's going to get this and needs to work on it. And when Tom's sending this, I'm sure he's also thinking, geez, you know, I hope that Debbie takes this, and hopefully this doesn't go out to all the employees, things like that. You know, and I can count on Debbie, but boy, it'd be nice if I had some control over an email like this before I sent it out. And you do. You know, look at these little buttons right here. When you have Azure Information Protection, rights management services with Azure Information Protection, you get these capabilities. So these handy little buttons right here. See this one right here says do not forward. When I click it, now immediately I go from this. I go from nothing here, and I click this, and now it says do not forward. Recipients can read this message but cannot forward, print, or copy the content. The conversation owner has full permissions to their message and all replies. Permission granted by Wayne Shaper. Well, again, that's me acting as Tom Jones. This is so handy. This means now that Tom's going to send this to Debbie. And if Debbie accidentally forwards this email to somebody else, it won't matter. That person's going to receive an encrypted message. And if they're not authorized, they're not going to be able to see it. Also, if Debbie if she brings somebody the message or forwards it off, it won't matter. And if Tom wants to revoke this message, he can do it as well. So even Debbie would not even be able to see the contents after he sent it. She'd see Tom send her a message, but it would be encrypted. She couldn't do anything with it because it had been revoked. So that's the kind of protection you have when you have Azure Information Protection. And you know, me just speaking as a business owner, I use that quite a bit, and it's very reassuring to be able to send a sensitive email without having to worry you know, is this accidentally going to be sent, or is it going to be part of a reply all chain? That sensitive part's going to be at the bottom, or somebody's just going to make a mistake, send it to the place they shouldn't have. You hit that button, you don't have to worry about that. So now let's look at Debbie's end. So Debbie has a monthly sales forecast, and she put this together for Tom. And so now what she has to do is she has to get it over to Tom and make sure that it's also secure. So she has a bunch of sensitive information in there. So she has to figure out how they get this over. So one of the things she could do is she could do like we've all done before, which is, you know, encrypt with a password. All right, so you hit encrypt with a password, and what happens is that you then have to put in a goofy little password in there that only you remember, and you know, she'll send this attachment over to Tom. She'll probably send Tom a text message saying, hey, to get into that very sensitive spreadsheet, you have to put in this password so it stays secure. And then, you know, hopefully you don't forget that password as well. Another option is she could just take the spreadsheet and then just go ahead and put it on the file server. She'll put it on the finance folder in the file server. That's where Tom, hopefully he has permissions to go see that too. She'll tell him you can go and access it there. Hopefully it stays secure. But that document is actually naked for all intents and purposes. That document sits there. Hopefully the permissions are set, but really still, whoever manages IT is probably still going to have access to that as well. That's a little uncomfortable. And if that person accidentally forgets or messes up permissions on that document could be taken, could be exposed. A better option is to use Azure Information Protections. And so we could go ahead and we can go Protect Workbook, Restrict Access, and click this. And then we'll get some options. We can restrict permissions to this workbook. We can read, we can give read access. We'll give it to Tom Jones so he can read it, but he won't make any changes in the calculations. We could get change access. We can give it to Laura Smith at contoso.com. And so Laura's the accountant in the company. So she needs to go in there and she can make changes. And we even have more options. We can set we can have this workbook expire. We can set whether somebody can print or not. We can set if we allow somebody to copy allow somebody to make a copy of the content that has read access. We can also request additional access. So we have quite a bit of control over this document. And you know, here, when we send that off, that document, whether it gets sent to everybody in the company, it won't matter. because only the people that can see this, that were given permissions by Debbie Wagner, will be able to see this document. She didn't even have to set up the do not forward button on the email. Now, she should, right? But she wouldn't even have to, because this document contents, even though people could see the subject, nobody would be able to get into it except Tom, Laura, and Debbie. And there's another option too. When you have Azure Information Protection, you can label documents. So that makes it even easier to set permissions. So you see right here, we have confidential, anyone, not protected. We could change that. We could click this little pencil right here. And right now, the default in the company is to set that any document that's created in the company will be set to a sensitivity level of confidential, but available to anyone who has it. If we wanted to change that, we could click this and change it to highly confidential. And so, you know, at Cerulean, for example, documents come up to be a default of confidential but available to anybody. Somebody could change that to change the label to confidential, employees only. Or if we hit highly confidential, maybe that just means only partners can see that. But we can also go to highly confidential finance or highly confidential HR, and just by clicking a button, the permissions are set. And I want to show you, we're back at portal.azure.com. Just again, to the people who are, you know, play around with this stuff a little bit to give them an orientation of where this is at. Here at portal.azure.com, where we would go click on Azure Information Protection, and we would set the policies. So here's where we would set, you know, the different labels people could put on the documents, whether it's confidential, highly confidential, and what does that mean? If it's highly confidential, does that mean only certain groups of people can see it? And confidential, you know, if we want to set all employees, that only employees can see it, we can set with these labels to whatever we want and allow the users to set their own permissions on the document. And now they do not have to be dependent on IT or worrying about IT if the security was set up properly. And so how we're protected with all this now. So only computers enrolled under company management are allowed access and copy, sync, store data locally. Again, just having a valid user account is not going to be enough anymore. We actually want to know where this data is being accessed, worked on, and copied to and stored. Now we have that control. Employees can access company data with their personal mobile devices, but only with company-approved mobile apps, you know, Outlook Mobile, Word Mobile, OneDrive Mobile, and they're going to take their phone, connect to their app store, download their app, but once their app connects to our data now the app now knows that that's company data, and that is separate from any personal data that they work with. And that data can only stay inside the apps that we give permission to, and if that person leaves, that data just disappears. And then the third thing there, if a hacker gets an employee's login and tries to log in from, say, Bulgaria, the sign-in will be flagged as high risk and the sign-in blocked, pending a second authentication method via cell phone or just a straight-up password reset. Other things that EMS E5 does that I didn't cover. Managed computer operating system updating, managed antivirus updating and scanning, automated imageless computer setups. And again, I can't specify or say how important and how great that is to not have to deal with images and have a good, consistent computer setup out of the box every time. And then managing computer inventory. So all the devices you have in the system, who's the principal user on the device, what's the device's name, and the information on the device. And then automated document security management. So you can take Azure Information Protection and you can set up keywords like service agreement, employment agreement, or you can even specify things that, you know, if there's social security numbers in the documents or credit card accounts, you can automatically classify those documents and set permissions. As soon as you hit save, it knows exactly what to do and wraps those documents up and secures them. So Enterprise Mobility and Security E5 is just $14.80 per user per month. It is big company IT security and management for peanuts. It is so cheap. And then Microsoft Azure EMS Everywhere Microsoft has a promotion called Azure and EMS Everywhere for fiscal 2018. I just found out about it a couple days ago. So they will cover a proof of concept or deployment, and they'll give funding for it. So ballpark, 30 users can qualify. For a company that needs 30 licenses can qualify for $1,500 towards deployment services. So you have to do this through a partner. So what the partner will do is they can either do a proof of concept or they can actually do a deployment. and then that money would be given to the partner. So effectively, it reduces the cost to the end user. And 60 user companies that need 60 licenses can qualify for about $3,000 towards deployment services. So when we've done in the past, we find one that qualifies, and there's two different areas, whether you're using Enterprise Mobility and Security E5 or another product called Microsoft 365 Enterprise E5. Either one of those would qualify with 30 or 60 users respectively. We just put it in, and lately we've been hearing back within just a couple days. So if you're thinking about doing this, you would definitely want to take advantage of that. And then Office 365 E5, there's two security items. So now we were talking about EMS E5, but I just want to pause for just a second and talk about security inside of Office 365 E5. Because Office 365 E5 is the version of Office 365 that I recommend, and it's the one that I recommend using. It's the one I use myself. And it's the one that gives us the most capabilities and the most security. So it has alert policies. And so if someone has raised their administrative permissions on the network, an alert can be sent off. If there's some unusual external file activity, an alert will go off. If there's some unusual volume of external file sharing, alert goes off. If there's an unusual volume of file deletion, alert goes off. So these are, the system is back there learning about what's going on and what happens with your data and what is typical behavior. And then that machine learning starts to see stuff that's unusual. Then what it'll do is go ahead and send an alert. And so you'll get a notification. So I think knowing if there's a lot of file data being pulled out remotely from your system, or if there's a lot of files being deleted, and you can get that information real-time alerts, and then potentially do something about it, very helpful. And then it also has Exchange Online Advanced Threat Protection. So this is where we block malicious links and emails. We call this safe links, or we also detonate email attachments in a container using a container. Sorry, the wording's a little off there. And I'll get into that in just a moment. So how do hackers get your user account these days? Through email links and email attachments. So here's an example of a phishing email. We've all probably seen examples of this. The one here, this is for Office 365 saying your account's going to be suspended. You got to confirm your email and password now. Here's one from Chase Bank saying that your account's being deactivated, that you got to reactivate it, put in your username and password. But the point is, the legitimate looking, somebody goes in there, puts in their username and password, and then voila, the hackers got the information they need to see what they can do now, especially with the Office 365 stuff. So they got the username and password, and then they're going to go and see what they can do. And I've seen some pretty concerning things when it comes to companies that they had somebody who had given up their user account. I've even seen a situation where, and this even came over and happened. Somebody tried to do this to us too at Zerillion, where a company, all they have to do is find out who the owner is and then who the finance person in the company is. That's all they need to do. And then once they have the user account of either one of those, then they can go ahead and try to steal some money from the company. I won't get into the whole tactic here, but it's amazing. Once you just find somebody, it doesn't even have to be a super high level person in the company. It can either be a low level person. You can start working with a scam. So the point is, if we have a system out there that can help prevent us from getting these goofy, scammy links to begin with, is what we want to do. So safe links. So again, this is part of Office 365 E5, having safe links. So have every email that landed in your mailbox with a web link be buffered with the safe link by Microsoft. So Microsoft's safe link points to the original link in the email, but didn't do anything unless you clicked on it. All right. So email comes in, it passed the spam filter, it passed the virus filter, and it still landed in your mailbox. Okay. And it has just a link. And now that link, when you click on it, could take you to some website that could cause problems for you. So what it'll do, if that email passes through any email that has a link, it'll create a safe link. So Microsoft will put a little buffer link there, and that buffer link is going to point to the original link, which it's going to store away. And it only gets activated if you go and click on that link. If you click the link, the machine kicks in, and it says, okay, wait a minute, that link is going to this location. The display name is off from where it wants to go. That's not good. or it's trying to take you to a place that we already know is a website that is malicious and is going to do harm. We're just going to block it. And that's what safe links is. Completely separate from the attachments on the computer. It's all those links that people get through. So that is safe links. So it's going to determine if the link is bad or not, and if it's bad, it'll block. If not, it'll allow you to go through. And then email attachment detonation. So we understand that when we have a spam filter, it clears out the spam, and then we come through and we have a virus filter. If it sees an attachment that looks like a virus, then what it'll do is it'll scan it and see if it's bad or not, and then chuck it if it is. Okay, well, what if there's some new virus that comes through and we're not sure? You know, it passes the spam filter, it passes the virus filter's definitions, but now it's still got in our mailbox. Well, what email attachment detonation does in Office 365 E5 is that it will take that attachment and replicate a user click to run the attachment in a separate container. And it'll see if that attachment wants to do weird things or bad things. And if it starts trying to install itself places it shouldn't in the container, it'll immediately kill that thing, and it will pull that attachment out. It will not allow that to be delivered to your mailbox. It's completely different. It's a completely different level of security than scanning for spam or scanning for viruses. And it's amazing that that capability exists. Again, the two ways people are going to get in and hack an account to begin with, it's going to be links in emails and attachments in those emails. So Windows Enterprise E5. So I'm going to go into that. That is the most secure version of Windows. So usually when you get a computer, if it has Windows on it, you'll get Windows Pro. There's certain licensing with Office 365 where you can actually license the computer to be have Enterprise E5 on it. And I want to point this one out because it's what I use. And it gives you application virtualization. So all the apps that are installed on your computer, they run in a separate container from the operating system, as opposed to what traditionally happens is any apps that you install from the web or whatever, they just get installed directly on the operating system. With E5, it's a virtualized container. So it provides a level of safety and separation between the operating system and the applications themselves, protecting you. It also has environment virtualization. So the old days, some people might remember roaming profiles. Well, with the Windows 10 operating system, the settings, the personalized settings in there, those can actually be synced up to Azure Active Directory. And then if you get set up with a new computer, your settings will come with you to that new computer. So imagine that where we have Microsoft Intune, where we can set up how we want a device configured. It'll configure the computer right out of the box. It'll load up the software, and then here come your personalized settings for Windows and the other applications as well that came with you. Wow, right? And that's what you get with Windows Enterprise. And Device Guard, that's where each one of the components on your computer, when they're booting up, it's making sure the code is valid and there isn't some virus that's been installed early on when the computer was booting up. And the Credential Guard takes your user account, your identity, and stores it in a special container inside the Windows operating system, again, for your protection. I think those are really handy features for security. And if you could just get those pieces, you know, if you had Windows Enterprise E5, you had Office 365 E5, and then you had EMS E5, whoa, you have everything at that point. And then what you'd have is Microsoft 365 Enterprise E5. You'd have EMS E5, complete IT security management for your infrastructure. You'd have Office 365 E5. You'd have complete IT productivity system and a complete business phone system on top of that. That's another video. Actually, here's another video because I made that video already, but I got to update that video too. But you have a phone system, you just need to pick the calling plan for it. And then you have Windows Enterprise E5, and it's the most secure version of the Windows OS. And it's the one that gives you the most flexibility as well. So that is a product. I mean, a complete IT solution for any business. Just bring a computer. You're always licensed for the latest version of Office and Windows and up to 5 computers. And this is the package that Zerillion uses. It's $61 per user per month. You have everything. You just got to bring a computer. So these days, when I talk to companies, you know, this video is about this product right here. I mean, it truly is. But as I was going through the security, and I was thinking about, well, EMS E5, what it means to me, and what it means to, we put this in the clients, and how it is vastly superior than anything we put in when we ever put in servers and our Active Directory. Well, I know I feel that same way about Office 365 E5, and then Windows Enterprise E5. You put all this together, all those things together, you got a fantastic system. You got the best cloud services that Microsoft has, and I know it because this is what I use. And so I highly recommend that one. And that one also qualifies for that Microsoft promotion, whether you have 30 plus users or 60 plus users. And I did want to point out real quick, when you get involved in security on Office 365, Intune, EMS, all of them have reporting and security portals. The one I wanted to took a screen clip here was the Security and Compliance Center inside of Office 365. So when we are engaged with a customer, when we're doing routine support, help desk support, and then also routine reviews for them, and they happen on a weekly basis. This is one of our first stops when we go through our checklist, and it's at the Security and Compliance Center. And there's all sorts of reports and information that we take seriously when we're looking around to see if there's any problems in the account or problems that are festering or things we need to remediate. One I wanted to point out here is the Office 365 Secure Score. Bottom line is, when you have an Office 365 account, you go in and look, it'll tell you how you're doing, and it'll give you recommendations how to make the system more secure. And it will show you recommendations in order of impact on the users. So it'll start with the things that are easiest, low impact, but could really help with security and keep moving your way up. I think it's pretty interesting that if you click through this, the average right now is a score of 40. Okay, and I think again, and that should be alarming and concerning, and not just because the IT guy thinks that, because this IT guy has been around and seen some things, and one of the things I'll say too is when clients say, well, the whole video is about how people don't take their IT security management seriously. I will meet people and they'll be like, look, we don't really have problems here. Our stuff's really not that, sensitive. I'm like, well, I get it. Or I get that they haven't been through some huge blow up problem. As an IT company, and I imagine other IT companies watching this can understand this, we absorb all the problems all the time. That's what we get paid to do. I'm not complaining. But we hear it all. And so we have become sensitive ourselves to knowing really the way things should be set up so we don't have problems and we can minimize problems. So I know if I've got a computer that's under 3 years old and we've got the Microsoft 365 Enterprise E5 license for this user, and that's what we're working with, oh my goodness, I know we're going to have a lot fewer problems than the company that just said, look, give me business essentials and get me hooked up. We won't worry about security. And the computers are 4 or 5 years old, and he's trying to figure out how I can get all this stuff running on Windows 7. Let's do it right. That's all I'm saying. Let's do it right. So if you're a smaller company, let's get the security infrastructure and management set up right the first time. And if you're a bigger company, let's think about this. Let's do proper change management. We'll do training. We'll get to that. We're almost at the end of this. We'll get to that in a moment. We'll do training to make sure that your users can adapt to these changes. They're trained, and we'll do this in a way that is least impactful to them. But now, once we're done with that, we have to go into these systems. We have to go look and review logs inside of Office 365, the Security and Compliance Center, Azure Active Directory, Identity Protection, Microsoft Intune. Those are very important. Those used to be like the server checks we used to do, the backup checks we used to do on traditional systems. We have to get in these systems, and somebody has to have focused eyeballs looking at these systems, and that's what we do when we go through our process when we're reviewing systems for clients who we do this for. It's time to get rid of your Windows Server domain controllers. Seriously, I haven't used them in years. So I'm going to take you back to the good old days. I'll put it at 1997 to 2012. At least the good old days for me. That's because that's when I started, was in 97. But Windows Server ruled, Exchange Server ruled. Companies still had, and were still putting in on-premise Exchange servers. Active Directory was so important to our IT functionality that we would commit not 1, but 2 servers as domain controllers to host our Active Directory database. And what did that Windows Server Active Directory do for us? It held our user accounts. It held our computer accounts. It didn't do much on its own in the way of security. Very few businesses actually used group policy, and the ones that did, it was very limited what they did with it. They might have mapped some drives, set up some printers. If you lost your domain controller, oh my God. Emails down, file servers down, SQL servers down. There's a very angry ownership and management, and there's a poor, pitiless IT guy sitting there trying to get the thing back up. And, of course, he's blamed for it again because it's his job. He's supposed to maintain the stuff and watch after it. Fair enough. So what does the Windows Server Active Directory do for us these days? Very little. Most businesses have their business services moved to the cloud, or they have plans to move their business services to the cloud. Email, document management, business applications, financial applications, CRM. Again, they're all of them are mostly in the cloud now, or there's plans to do it. The user accounts that really matter are in the cloud. They're not on site. They're not inside that Active Directory domain controller. Yet, for all businesses that started out, I'm going to say 2008 is the number I'm going to put it. Start out before 2008, there's a good chance they still have a domain controller sitting around with all the desktops and laptops digitally hooked into that domain controller, their local domain joint. It's time to move on. Azure Active Directory is Microsoft's user account cloud service, identity management service. That's what Azure Active Directory is. And it's a far superior service than the one you get on a local Windows domain controller. Microsoft Intune is effectively Microsoft's group policy cloud service. And the last time I looked, I did an account of all the different settings you can configure for a Windows 10 computer. It was about 300 different settings. The ones that matter to me when I'm working on it, there's probably 10 settings that I really care about. But if you really want to go that far with it, you could. And it just keeps growing. And it's going to be even more integrated and more configurable with the next version of Windows that comes out as well. Windows 10 Pro and Windows Enterprise natively join Azure Active Directory. And a single Azure Active Directory account can be used to access all of their business cloud services. So think about that. If we've got all these different cloud services out there, I've got this Azure Active Directory cloud account, I've got these cloud services with the web-based services. When an employee joins a company, I can, in one shot, give them access to, with a single Azure Active Directory login, and they'll quickly have access to all the company web-based apps. When the employee leaves the company, just disabling their Azure Active Directory account, and they instantly lose all access to third-party web-based apps. One shot. It's called single sign-on. And life is better and cheaper without servers. If you're in charge of IT, you get paid, what I like to tell IT people, and this doesn't matter if you're an IT manager whose full-time job is to manage IT, or you are a finance manager who's, typically my experience with the finance managers, they really don't get into it. They're not in there messing around with stuff. They're managing the relationship. The the operations managers, those are the people who they'll get in there and they'll play with the stuff. But whatever your role is, if you get paid X amount of dollars to manage Y amount of stuff, let's say some of that stuff is IT stuff. When you're in the cloud, you're going to get paid X amount of dollars. You're probably going to manage about 60% of Y. So X to manage 100% of Y. Now in my new cloud life, I get paid X to manage 60% of Y. That's the feeling. And the irony is, ownership will be so thrilled that you led this change into the cloud. You got it done. You'll probably get a raise. You're going to look around, and I've had these conversations with IT people before. You're going to look around like, I'm actually working less. My life's better. I'm not messing around with things late at night. I'm not dealing with equipment on site. And my boss is really impressed with me. I think I'm going to get raised this next time around. And that really is what happens. And I would also say, if you can get good at a cloud-powered world, that's where IT is going anyway. So that's where you should be taking your career. Or again, even if you're not an IT person, but you're a business manager, because usually for the bigger clients, it's not the owners who are working on this stuff. It's a business manager. So even if you don't do this full time, you should still be aware of where modern IT is going. And I'll also say this, if you did make this change, and this is a side note right here, You took on a leadership role in the company. You led the company in the direction of modern IT, a fully cloud-powered with no servers, physical or virtual. And it was a decent-sized project you took on with an idea of real change. So congrats on you for sucking it up and getting it done for your company. They're lucky to have you. And each time I talk to somebody who is making this change for their company, and sometimes I sense that they're really unsure about all this, but they believe in Microsoft, and they've seen, well, okay, Brilliant's a gold partner, and we've checked their references, and they seem to be well reviewed and all this sort of stuff. So, okay, here we go. Let's go with this. And they're nervous because they've had other projects not work out or have been a big hassle. And believe me, I know I've been through all kinds of IT projects, but they get through it, they get past it, and now they're in this other world that's so much better. And I always say to them I got to be careful what I say, because it's going to sound like I'm sucking up to a prospective client, right? If I say, well, if your company only knew how lucky they were to have you leading them in this direction, that's exactly how I feel. It's exactly how I feel. It's true. Because there's the next note here. There are many IT managers that are happy to just lay low, surf the internet all day long, hope nothing breaks, and collect a paycheck, because learning new skills and making the change is just too much work. I see those people too. So hats off to you guys and ladies that are making those changes for the company. But there's one side note. I'll make this brief. Once you get moved over to the cloud world, cloud managed, and this new security infrastructure and all this sort of stuff, that's so much better. You're going to have this legacy settings on the individual workstations and laptops. They're going to be locally domain joined. There's no easy way that I know to remove the computer from being connected to a local Windows Active Directory domain controller, and because you got to remove it, put it in a work group. It's Azure Active Directory joined, which is what we want, but you got to remove it out of being connected to that local domain controller, and it creates a new profile. So we got to bring the user's profile settings over. It's like setting up a new profile, and so I don't yet know if there's a clean, easy way to do that. If you know and could comment in the comments below in this video, I would love to know. We've been a few rounds with Microsoft on this to see if they had something. I'm just not aware, and I certainly don't claim to know everything. If there is a tool out there now, that would be phenomenal if we could make that a quicker process. So you have this situation where everything's in the cloud. Your management's all done by Microsoft Intune, Azure Active Directory, but we got this cleanup. And the cleanup process takes about an hour per computer to remove it from the local Active Directory domain controller. And it doesn't make things faster, it doesn't add new features, the users won't see anything different. It's just on the back end as IT people, we know that needs to be done to clean the system up, and also to make sure the computer doesn't have any remnants of being dependent on that local domain controller for anything. So like I said, but once you've gotten through that, you're done. You are now in modern IT. You're completely secure, completely managed. No more server refreshes ever again. You only have refresh firewalls, wireless access points, and switches. That's it. And those are on 5-year cycles. And then if you license Windows desktops and laptops properly, the Windows Enterprise E5 and Office 365, you'll always be licensed for the latest version of Windows. And then you can just replace those computers as they get slow, not just because a new version of Windows came out. And it's the way I do IT in my own company. So everything you see here is the way we do things at Xerillion. And how we set up startup companies that want their IT done right from the start. So it's not just us, but when we have companies that say, look, we're a clean slate, we got 3 people here, we're starting this thing up, we're going to be 20 people, and next year, great, awesome. And it's one of the things I do enjoy working with, because we can go and set up right from the beginning. And that's usually the mantra that I say when I'm talking to them. Because normally they just want to get set up with the cloud services. I'm like, hold on, let's get everything right from the start. And don't forget the training. Having all the new cloud technology is incredible, but you have to do the training. And I'm speaking to the end users, to the business managers, and the IT people. I've got something for each of you here. At Xerillion, the end user training, when we get customers set up, there's change management about the project that we're going to do, what's going to happen in Office 365, but the users have to get their skills up to speed. So I'm showing right now is one of the video series in our training platform. It's about security. And these videos are really great because they're not boring, they're interesting. They're anywhere from 1 minute to 4 minutes each, and you just take them in series, to work through them as you have time to work on them. But if I also say there's the security one, so we want to make sure people understand security. All right, so we would if you came in with us and we would set you up with the training, one of the first things we would do is right at the top of the list of the training is the security videos. It doesn't take much time, but it brings a lot of awareness and understanding, just some things that they can do to make sure that they're doing their part to keep the system secure. But let's take it just a step further. I mean, there's a lot of content on here, but what we do is we pick out the stuff that I know really pertains to the users. So training around Office 2016, Word 2016, OneDrive for Business, Skype for Business, Outlook 2016, there's a big one, PowerPoint, Windows 10, OneNote, eDiscovery, Office 365, SharePoint Online, there's another big one, Excel 2016. If you think about the way you work with Office products, Outlook, Word, Excel, PowerPoint, for example, the way you work with them now is probably the way you worked with them when you first worked with them. You got going, you stumbled through it, clicked around a little bit. As new versions came out, you clicked around, saw a few different features. But in the back of your mind, you're thinking, I've never been trained on this stuff. I've never taken a class. Boy, if I just had a class on Excel, or if I just had a class on Word, I would be so much more efficient. My documents would look so much more professional. And here's the thing. It's absolutely true. What you're thinking is 100% the case. But what are you going to do about the training? What do you do? How do you take it? If you go on some of the Microsoft training, look, not their strongest suit, right? And there's a vast amount of training that is out there in the Microsoft world. But our training platform makes things a lot simpler. It's quick hits of information to get you up to speed fast with these products. And it's all around the Office 365 platform. So get trained on security, just like in the last slide there. We take you through that, and that's a good one. It doesn't take too long, and it's interesting to watch. Again, short videos, and then right on the heels of that, start working through the training plan. Get really good at the Office products, the Office world, Office 365. And the training does that as well. And it's really a training platform. This is going to sound like this is a commercial for the training platform. It's not. I wanted to bring up the security training here, but I also wanted to say that don't stop there at the security training. Keep on going. Because if you are on a good training platform, it's incredible what you can do when you know how to use the tools. And this training platform, when you finish it up in Word, for example, you're going to feel like anywhere in Word, you know all the tools and what to do with it. And you're going to look back and go, whoa, that doesn't even take too long. Because it's the stuff that really matters that you want to get access to. And that's what that training platform has. But it's ongoing goal-focused video training for high user adoption. That's what we want to drive. So we want to handle the change management so you guys know how to use this stuff. And then we want to drive your user adoption so really using these tools. We want to drive in user functionality, and we want to reduce the stress around changes. And again, all videos are 1 to 4 minutes long. You can get training when you can. And then video after video, you're going to go, oh, wow, I didn't know that, or Outlook could do this, or Word could do that. Geez, that would have saved me a ton of time. And then there's a scoreboard. So it'll show how everybody's doing against everybody else, and it will rank you. And it's interesting because when we've seen this at our company and other companies, and there's a little bit of mechanism to get it working so everybody's doing it. But there's like a third of the group of the employees. It seems always about a third that just starts rocketing up, and then you look down at that and go, man, if everybody was that motivated to learn this stuff, I'm going to have a company of super people here. You don't have to just stop there. I'm a big believer in just having videos in general to move the company along for training. Anyway, it's extremely useful. So now I'm going to talk to the IT people real quick, and we're almost done here. Your IT skills are out of date. It's time to suck it up and skill up. It's not fun. It's boring. I get it. The time it takes to put into this stuff, it takes a lot of time. I feel for you. But you got to do it if you really want to understand this stuff. Just Google searching your way through things is not going to get it done. These are the trainings that I recommend for the IT pros that are watching this video and thinking about making these changes. Certainly, if you want to talk to me, give me a call. We definitely talk to plenty of IT people, make those changes where we help you with the project, and you handle support after that, or we help you with support, whatever you want to do. But the MCSA Office 365 is your key, and the MCSE mobility is what you need to be able to handle the management of the individual computers in a cloud-based world. So MCSA Office 365 for Cerulean, this one is really important. Everybody here has to get it. I've got it. It takes about, I would say 50, 60 hours per exam. One of them I had to take twice. And then this is 3 exams. And this right here is 3 exams right here. So this is all about Windows 10 like you've never known it before. And there's another thing I would say. Windows 10 is a sophisticated piece of technology. You need to treat it as such and learn it that way. So it covers everything around Windows 10, deployment, configuration, security, and then also the cloud management piece is one of those tests too. So that one is really important as well. So that's the future for Microsoft and supporting it for IT people. And so that would be 5 exams, and you would really be setting yourself apart from any other IT people. If you are a business manager, this would definitely be too much. The training that on the Cerulean training platform would be plenty for you. And that's it. So a couple things. So if you found this video useful, please subscribe to the channel if you found it helpful. When I see people subscribe, and I don't have a lot of videos up there because these are hard to put together. Hard, time-consuming things to put together. But it's really rewarding when you get something back from YouTube saying, hey, this last month, people watched 62,000 minutes of your videos, and people comment, and we've certainly had people call and stuff like that. And it's been great, and it encourages me. So if you like it, subscribe, and I will definitely I continue to make more. I have a lot of plans out. It's been 3 months since I made the last video because I've been stuck on this one for so long. I'm curious once I finish this up and before I get into editing how long this one's going to be. I have a feeling it's probably going to be longer than I want, but anyway, it's just a lot of content to go over, and I was surprised with the scope of information that I had to cover that I didn't have to cover in other videos. But I'm going to continue to make more. I probably got like 20 items listed, but they're probably not going to be as big as this one is here. But anyway, subscribe, and if you can give me a thumbs up if you like the video. I mean, certainly YouTube watches that stuff. And give me a comment below with any thoughts on modern IT and security management. If you agree or disagree, I do think this is the direction. I know what Microsoft judges me on as a partner, and it's definitely the cloud stuff. But if you have some other thoughts or other things you probably would have liked to see in the videos or something like that, please let me know. Love to engage with you on that. And if you're interested to talk sometime, happy to do it. You can email at support@cerulean.com, and that creates a ticket in our system, and you're going to get a call right away. We'll contact you. And then also you can call in if you like as well. And then remember the Microsoft promotion. $1,500 towards deployment or proof of concept for 30 licenses of EMS E5 or Microsoft 365 Enterprise E5, or $3,000 towards deployment or proof of concept for 60 plus licenses of EMS E5 or Microsoft 365 Enterprise E5. And that is it. So thanks for your time, and I'll see you in the next video.